our culture has shifted, and we need to recognize that when it comes to sharing our faith. So why has it changed? I think I put it in your notes there, this quote by a person. He said this: the combined impact of the information age, postmodern thought, globalization, and racial ethnic pluralism that has seen the demise of the grand American story has also displaced the historic role of the church has played in that story. As a result, we're seeing the marginalization of the institutional church. Now, I'm going to talk about this in a little bit, but the reason I put that in there is because traditionally, where do we expect people to come to know Jesus Christ? Where do we expect them to come to know Jesus Christ?
Traditionally in church, but that's not really accurate.
I'm talking traditionally, okay? Say, going back 30 years, where do we expect them to come to know Christ? We invite them into church, and then as a pastor shares, hopefully they will understand what the gospel is all about, and they will come to know Jesus Christ as their Savior. The reality is, especially young people today, they're not going to walk through that door. So how do you get Christ to them? That's the problem in our culture today that we need to address. I don't think that there's any doubt whatsoever in our minds that America is becoming increasingly secular. As a culture, we're becoming increasingly secular. The way I describe it sometimes is like this. And this makes it hard for us as followers of Jesus Christ sometimes. We live, here's two great pathways. This one here is the Bible. Has the story of creation, why God put us here, redemption through Jesus Christ. That's the story of the Bible here. That's the story of the Bible. But on the other side over here, there is the story of, let me write it this way so you won't be upside down. There is the story of humanism, which is the story of our culture today. Humanism, okay? You don't need God. You, in and of yourself, through your own reason, through science, you can figure out just about anything that you need to know. You don't need somebody that's supernatural. This is where we live, in here. That's where we exist. We exist at the crossroads of these two stories that both of them claim to be true. Both of them believe that they're true. The story of humanism down here, that's the story of postmodern America, is this one here. Then you have the story of the Bible, and here's Flora right here. And here's Williams right there. That's where they live, and that's where they exist. And that's where the conflict takes place. That's why we are afraid in sharing the gospel. Because we live at the crossroads of two huge stories that govern the thinking of just about everybody that's out there. One of them includes humanism. That is the prevalent teaching that is in our culture today. And the other is the story of the Bible. Both of them claim they are true. Both of them claim that they're true. And that's where we live, and that's where we exist. And so those of us that accept the gospel as members of the community of the church here, we believe that this is the true story of mankind, right here. We believe that that is reality when it comes to the story of mankind. But all the members, we are also members. This is we are then members of the church that believe this. But we're also members of this community here. Because we live in Hawthorne. We live in, wherever you live, okay? You can't opt out of it. You can't opt out of the influence of this community over here. Because you share the language of this over here. You share the values. You go to the schools that teach this. You read the magazines that promote this. You look at the TV shows and you go to the movies that also talk about this. You can't get out of it. You can't. And so we live at the crossroads of these two huge stories of mankind, and both of them are incompatible with each other, and both of them teach a different story. And that's where we end up living there. So here's my question for you. And this is a big question for us as followers of Jesus Christ. We need to answer this. When it comes to the gospel, what difference does it make because of the two communities that we live here? What are the options for the church? What options does the church have? We have this. We live according to the Bible here. We also exist in this community of the world and the world system that's out there. What options does the church have? Maybe my question isn't that clear, but somebody give an answer, and then we'll try and build off of that
To
answer.
go along with the direction of the world, or
Okay.
stay in the direction that we were going.
Say that again.
To go towards the direction that the world is, to kind of fit in and accommodate, or to
Bingo. Okay.
And to that respect, we are called to be the light of the world.
That's right. You're exactly right on that. Okay, you're exactly right on that. But because of the enormous pressure of today, what does a church usually end up doing? What do many churches end up doing? They end up compromising. I think that's
selling up.
soft sell the gospel. I'm going to use the word.
About sin.
We're going to come to the message of the gospel shortly.
May I say a name?
Sure.
Joel Osteen.
Okay.
Joel Osteen.
Hopefully we're not offending anybody here, but Joel Osteen, I think, is a very good example of somebody who has compromised the main biblical story here for the sake of finding followers or for the sake of building relationships, building a larger ministry, building, a TV ministry and everything else. I think that's probably a very good example, actually. But I think that the church ends up with two options. Really ends up with two options. And the one that the pastor has mentioned here, either consciously or unconsciously, we begin to accept more and more the story that is out there. Because it is so prevalent and it is so powerful, we end up accepting this more and more in our culture, in our churches. And as a result of that, we end up tailoring or we end up compromising the message of the gospel because it's impossible for these two things to exist together. So the only way that you can exist is in compromise. That's the only way you can do it. Because the stories are so different and they are so incompatible, the only way that you can exist is if you compromise the message of the gospel. And when you do that, you take out Jesus is the only way to God. You take that out and you've begun to accommodate this culture rather than staying faithful to this culture over here of the church. And I think that that is a huge danger in our churches today. And in the end, the more the church feels comfortable in this culture here, the more the church ends up feeling comfortable in this culture here, the more the church is going to end up being salt without any flavor. Okay? That's the reality. The church is a counterculture. It offers an alternative message to this. And when we begin to sacrifice that message to fit in, and we begin to compromise that message so that we get more people into our church, so that more money comes into the offering plate, whatever the reasons might be. When we do that, when we accommodate, we end up losing our saltiness, just like you said. Okay, that's the reality. The other, well, let me say this. Have you ever seen this bumper sticker?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay? Have you ever seen that in the back of a car? Coexist. Okay? And look for them. You'll find them. Sometimes, some people aren't looking for it, but look for it, you'll find them out there. When you look at the coexist bumper sticker on some cars, what do you see? Somebody was very ingenious. And what they ended up doing was they ended up spelling coexist with various religious symbols from different religions. Okay, so the C there is the crescent moon for Islam. And when you get to the O is the peace symbol. Remember, you young people don't know the peace symbol, but the old peace symbol. And you can go on to the Star of David is in there, and the X is for the Wiccan community. And then at the very end, you have the cross is the T here. What's the point of that anyway? What's the point of that bumper sticker?
You're okay, I'm okay.
You're okay, I'm okay, everybody, just get along, okay? Okay? That's what the essential message of that bumper sticker is there. Just get along. Don't push your opinion on me, okay? You don't have a right to push your religion on me, so let's just all get along. That's the point of that coexist bumper sticker there. So you evangelicals, back off, okay? Just back off. Let's just coexist together. That's the essential message of that. But the end result of when the gospel is simply absorbed into the culture is that the religion ends up being a personal, private, religious experience. That's what it ends up being. And as such, you don't have a right to tell me what to believe. If you want to believe in Jesus, that's fine. That's your own personal religious experience. That's fine if you want to do that. But you don't have a right to be able to tell me then what I have to believe. That is the end result of compromise here. The end result of it. And, as followers of Jesus Christ and as members of the church here, the other option that we have is that we stay uncompromisingly faithful to the message of the gospel.
Amen.
And then if there is a clash of cultures here, we remain faithful. We remain faithful to the gospel there, because in the end, the gospel is the only credible alternative to humanism or to any other religion that is out there. It is the only credible alternative. Because all the other religions out there, they all tell us that we have to do something in order to achieve salvation. Christianity is the only one that says everything has been what? Has been done for us in Jesus Christ. We have the only solution that is credible when you compare it with the philosophy of humanism, when you compare it with all the other religions that are out there. We are the only alternative. So if we begin to compromise the solution, if we begin to fit in the solution into here, what we end up doing is we end up losing all credibility for the gospel. All we're doing is we're becoming one other option that's out there. But it's not a credible option. It's no different from any other option that's out there. And so when we look at our culture here, I think that one of the things that we really need to be challenged with is that we need to understand what our message is. We need to understand what our message is, and I'm going to ask you what our message is. I think that's next here. To me, this is an enormous challenge that we have in our culture today that we have to look at. And I don't know what else to say. But we have to remain faithful to the message of the gospel. Now, I believe that if we're going to impact this culture here, the postmodern culture, if we're going to impact that, we cannot continue on as business as usual. We're going to have to come up with some new options for sharing the gospel. We're going to have to come up with new plans for sharing the gospel because our culture has changed. Our culture has changed. So how we share the gospel also has to change. Our message does not change. We do not compromise the message at all. The message stays the same. How we present it, how we dress it up, how we present it can be different because our culture has changed. The way that we presented it 30 years ago may not be applicable or may not be effective in our 21st century. And so we're going to talk a little about that this morning here, this afternoon. The other thing that I'm going to say to you is that as we go forward in this culture here, the other thing that you can expect is just increasing opposition to your gospel message. It's going to happen. As we increasingly get more secular, this option here is going to only have more opposition. So, are you up for that? Are you up for that? Okay? Are you willing to accept some more opposition because of the gospel? I believe once you understand how to share the gospel in today's culture, I don't think it has to be a confrontatory thing. I don't think it has to be this. Okay? It doesn't have to be where you're always arguing and you're fighting. That is the older way of doing it. Today, it's naturally expressing what Christ has done in your life in natural conversation with other people. That's essentially how we have to do it today. Because our culture has changed.